It's funny what you mark as milestones in your life. First steps, first kiss, college graduation, first real job. Mine was the day I was assigned the Hollander boxes. My name is Mark Jennings, and I was, until recently, an associate at a respectable law firm in Newark. I was the guy who stayed late, the guy who triple-checked the footnotes. I was reliable. My world was built on precedent, on statutes, on the firm, comforting logic of the law. I believed in facts. I did not believe in ghosts, or curses, or the kind of chilling whispers that crawl up your spine at 3 a.m. Reality was what you could enter into evidence. My vulnerability wasn't a recent loss or a new house. It was ambition. I wanted to make partner before 35. So when management decided to finally archive the physical evidence from the Roy Den Hollander case, I volunteered. Hollander. The name still sours the air in the legal community. He was the men's rights lawyer who, consumed by a venomous hatred, went to Judge Esther Salas's home disguised as a delivery driver. He opened fire. He wounded her husband, Mark Anderl, and he murdered her son, Daniel. A 20-year-old kid, shot dead on his own doorstep, protecting his father. Hollander killed himself shortly after, leaving behind a hard drive full of incoherent rage and a list of other targets. The case was, for all legal purposes, closed. My job was just grim housekeeping, transporting the sealed boxes from the federal courthouse evidence lockup to our firm's deep storage, cataloging every item. It was morbid, yes, but it was a high-profile case. Showing initiative, even in the morgue of the legal world, was how you got noticed. I didn't feel dread. I felt a clinical detachment. I signed the chain of custody forms. The boxes were standard-issue cardboard, sealed with red evidence tape. Box 3 of 5 was the one. It contained personal effects, victim D. Anderl. I shouldn't have taken it home. It was a flagrant violation of protocol, but the firm's deep storage was a windowless room in the sub-basement that smelled of old paper and mildew, and I had a deadline. My own apartment, by contrast, was my sanctuary. A clean, modern high-rise unit on the 22nd floor overlooking the Passaic River. All glass, steel, and neutral colors. A fortress of rationality. I placed box 3 on my glass desk. That night, I worked late on a separate mergers and acquisitions file, the box sitting silently beside my monitor. The city lights blurred into a familiar, comforting haze. Around midnight, I heard it. A faint ding-dong. The notification chime from a Samsung phone. I checked my own device. An iPhone. Silent. I glanced at my girlfriend Sarah's phone, charging on the kitchen counter. Dark. I shrugged. The walls in these new builds are thin. Must be the neighbor. I went back to my spreadsheet. Ding-dong. It was louder. Closer. It came from the box. I stopped typing. The silence of the apartment rushed in, amplifying the sound of my own heartbeat. I stared at the red tape sealing the cardboard flaps. It was impossible. Anything electronic in an evidence box would have been drained of power years ago. Wind, I muttered, though my windows were sealed. Settling. I was tired. My mind was playing tricks. I stood up, stretched, and decided to call it a night. As I passed the desk, I felt a sudden, localized drop in temperature. A pocket of air so cold it felt like stepping into a walk-in freezer. It was centered precisely on the box. I recoiled, goosebumps rising on my arms. Just fatigue, I told myself, locking my office door. I was a rational man. I was in control of my reality. The next day, I started the cataloging. I sliced the evidence tape on box 3. Inside, nestled in bubble wrap, were the mundane artifacts of a life cut short. A baseball cap, a university textbook, a wallet, and, in a thick, zip-locked evidence bag, a black Samsung smartphone. Its screen was a spiderweb of cracks. The bag was marked, Item 4A, Mobile Device, D. Anderl. I placed it on my desk, and the cold returned. Not just a draft, but a penetrating, damp chill that settled in my bones. I spent the rest of the day logging the items, my eyes drifting back to the phone. I kept thinking I saw a flicker from behind the cracked screen, a ghost of light. I blamed the glare from my monitor. That night, the chimes returned. Not just one, a rapid succession. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Like someone impatiently ringing a doorbell. I stormed into my office. The room was icy. The phone was in its bag. Silent. Dark. This is ridiculous, I snapped at the empty room. And then I saw it, not in the phone, but in the reflection on my darkened monitor. A shape standing behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just my office chair and the wall. I looked back at the screen. The reflection was still there. A tall, slim figure. Vague like heat haze, but undeniably present. It was just standing there, watching me. My skepticism wasn't just cracking, it was shattering. This was not fatigue. This was not the wind. I was sharing my apartment with something. The reflection in the monitor raised its hand and pointed, not at me, at the phone. My breath hitched. I felt a pressure in my chest, a primal terror that defied all logic. I wanted to run, to throw the box and its contents into the river, but I was frozen. The figure in the screen remained, its hand outstretched, demanding. The phone, still sealed in its bag, lit up. The screen glowed an unnatural, pulsing white through the cracks, and on it, a single text notification appeared. The sender listed only as unknown. The message was one word: help. I spent the next 48 hours in a state of fractured panic. I didn't sleep. I called Sarah and told her I was coming down with a nasty flu, that she should stay away. The lie tasted like ash. The truth was unspeakable. How could I say it? My apartment is haunted by a murdered college student, and he's texting me from beyond the grave. I'd be disbarred and committed. The isolation was immediate and absolute. The rational world I had inhabited was now a thin veneer, and I had fallen through. The phone became the epicenter of my world. The cold spot was permanent now, radiating from my desk like a wound in the fabric of the room. The chimes were constant, and the figure in the reflection was always there. It never moved. It just watched, waiting. I tried to rationalize. Maybe the phone was remotely activated by the police, a forgotten tracker. Maybe it was some kind of elaborate, cruel prank by another associate. But I knew, with a certainty that chilled me more than the cold, that neither was true. The terror was profound, but something else was growing alongside it. A desperate, obsessive curiosity. The phone wasn't just a haunting, it was a puzzle. The message said, help. Help with what? Hollander was dead. The case was closed. My legal mind, the only part of me that still functioned, kicked in. This was an investigation. I had to know the rules of this interaction. On the third night, trembling, I put on rubber gloves, a pathetic attempt at maintaining forensic integrity, and sliced open the evidence bag. The stench of ozone and something else, something metallic and burnt, wafted out. I plugged the phone into a charger. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the screen flared to life. It wasn't just on, it was unlocked. The home screen was a photo of a smiling young man with his arm around his mother. Daniel. A new text message appeared. He wasn't alone. My blood ran cold. Who wasn't alone? I typed, my fingers shaking so badly I misspelled the words twice. The three-dot typing bubble appeared. I was texting a dead man. Hollander, the reply came. He had help. This was impossible. The official investigation was exhaustive. Hollander was a lone wolf, driven by his own toxicity. The FBI found nothing, I typed. They didn't look, he bragged. The other one covered it up. He's still out there, laughing. I stared at the words. This wasn't a plea for help. This was a demand for justice. The entity in my apartment wasn't just a lost spirit. It was a witness. Who? I wrote. Give me a name. The phone screen flickered violently. The lights in my office dimmed, the bulbs buzzing. The figure in the monitor's reflection slammed its palms against the glass from the inside. A silent, furious scream. Vance, the phone typed. Thomas Vance. The name hit me like a physical blow. Thomas Vance, a defense attorney from a rival firm. I knew him. Not well, but I knew him. He was slick, arrogant, and notoriously aggressive in court. He'd also, briefly, been associated with the same men's rights forums Hollander had frequented, though he'd publicly distanced himself years ago. Prove it, I typed. The phone went dark, but my laptop sitting next to it switched on by itself. The browser opened. It didn't search Google. It went directly to a dark web forum, a page I'd never seen, loading an archived deleted thread from 3 years ago. The user, Arden Hollander, was ranting about Judge Salas, and replying to him, goading him on, was another user, Juris Reaper. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do, Roy, Juris Reaper had written. Talking is useless. Action is required. Someone needs to teach that bitch a lesson. My laptop screen scrolled down, faster than I could read, landing on a single private message from Juris Reaper to Arden Hollander, dated 1 week before the murder. It was an address, Judge Salas's unlisted home address. Thomas Vance had given Hollander the gun, metaphorically speaking. He was an accomplice to murder. I felt a sudden, profound wave of nausea and stumbled to the bathroom, vomiting into the sink. When I looked up, my reflection wasn't my own. For a split second, Daniel Anderl's face stared back at me from the mirror, his eyes wide, burning with an incandescent rage that was no longer just his, but mine too. I understood the horror. I was trapped. I was in possession of evidence that could reopen the case, evidence delivered to me by a ghost. If I went to the police, I'd be confessing to tampering with evidence, hacking, though I hadn't been the one typing, and conspiracy theories from beyond the grave. I'd be ruined. If I did nothing, the entity in my apartment would never leave. "What do you want me to do?" I whispered to the empty room. I returned to the office. The phone was glowing. Ruin him, like he ruined me. The entity was no longer passive. The bargain was set. The subtle incursions were over. The escalation had begun. My apartment, once my fortress, became my prison. The presence was no longer just a cold spot. It was a physical weight. I'd wake up gasping, feeling an immense pressure on my chest, as if someone were kneeling on me. The doors in my apartment would slam open and shut with concussive force. The television would snap on, always tuned to static, the volume rising to a deafening shriek. And the reflections. I couldn't look at any reflective surface. The figure of Daniel was no longer just in my monitor. He was in the glass of the windows, in the polished steel of the refrigerator, in the bathroom mirror. He was no longer just watching. He was vibrating with impatience, his face distorting in silent screams of coward and justice. I stopped answering my regular phone. My boss left furious voicemails. My colleagues sent concerned texts. Then Sarah, panicked, used her emergency key to get in. She found me in the office. I hadn't slept in what felt like a week. I was surrounded by the Hollander files, my laptop open, the cracked Samsung phone glowing beside it. The room was freezing. "Mark, my God," she whispered. She saw the filth, the scattered papers, the wild, paranoid look in my eyes. "You have to leave, Sarah. It's not safe here," I mumbled, my gaze fixed on the phone. "Mark, what did you do?" She saw the cut evidence bag. Her face went pale with a different kind of fear. "You broke the seal. You're hallucinating. This is a breakdown. You're obsessed with this case. You need help." She was the skeptic, the voice of reason. She was me 1 week ago. "He's here, Sarah," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "Daniel, he's here. He wants justice." "Stop it," she cried. "You're scaring me." She reached for the Samsung phone. "I'm taking this. We're going to the hospital." The moment her fingers brushed the casing, every light bulb in the apartment exploded simultaneously, showering us in glass. The ambient static from the TV became a deafening roar. The front door slammed shut with the finality of a bank vault. Sarah screamed. In the sudden darkness, illuminated only by the sickly glow of the phone, she finally saw him. The apparition was no longer in the reflection. It was in the room with us, standing between me and the door. It was solid, flickering, its form contorted by an impossible, agonizing rage. Sarah didn't hesitate. She threw a heavy law book at the window overlooking the river. The reinforced glass cracked but didn't break. She grabbed my desk chair and hurled it again. The window shattered. She scrambled onto the ledge, hyperventilating. "Mark, come on. We'll use the fire escape." I couldn't move. I was mesmerized by the spirit. "I can't," I whispered. "I have to finish it." Her face, a mask of terror and pity, was the last thing I saw clearly. "God help you, Mark." Then she was gone, climbing out into the night. I was alone again. The roar of static ceased. The apartment was deathly quiet. I looked at the entity. It looked at me. Now, the phone on the desk chimed. We begin. The next few days were a blur of vengeful, supernatural energy. I was no longer an attorney. I was a tool, a vessel. Daniel's spirit, now fully in control of my digital environment, guided my every move. My attempts at resistance were futile. I tried to throw the phone in the building's incinerator chute. I found it back on my desk, charred but glowing. I tried to leave the apartment. The elevator would refuse to open, and the stairwell door would be inexplicably jammed. I was a prisoner, and my ransom was the destruction of Thomas Vance. My sanity was a threadbare rope. I was losing myself. I'd find myself typing for hours, my fingers flying across the keyboard, accessing databases I didn't have credentials for. The entity was using my legal knowledge, my understanding of procedure, but augmenting it with its own ethereal ability to bypass firewalls. It was terrifying. It was also intoxicating. We didn't just find the dark web message, we found everything. Through the phone, the spirit pulled data from Vance's old discarded hard drives, from forgotten cloud backups. We found the deleted emails between him and Hollander, discussing their shared hatred. We found Vance's GPS data placing him near Hollander's apartment the day before the attack. We found his financial records, showing a large, unexplained cash withdrawal. The spirit wasn't just showing me, it was showing me. It forced visions into my head. I saw Vance, in his sleek corner office, laughing as he typed the address to Hollander. I saw him pouring a glass of scotch, watching the news of the murder, a small, satisfied smile on his face. I felt Daniel's rage, his betrayal, his agony. The barrier between his consciousness and mine was dissolving. I was becoming the haunting. When the dossier was complete, a digital bomb of irrefutable proof, the entity gave its final command. Release it, not to the police, to the world. Let them tear him apart. I sat in my ruined office, the shattered window letting in the cold night air. This was the confrontation, not with the ghost, but with the choice. Leaking this would destroy Thomas Vance. It would vindicate Daniel, but it would also be the end of me. The digital trail, though masked by the spirit's power, would still originate from my IP. I was using sealed evidence. I was committing dozens of federal crimes. I would be disbarred. I would face prison. This was the sacrifice, my life for his justice. I looked at the apparition, now calm, standing by the window, looking out at the city. It was no longer a monster of rage. It was just a 20-year-old kid. Okay, I whispered. My fingers hit the send key. I emailed the dossier to every major news outlet in the tri-state area, to the New Jersey Bar Association, and to the Department of Justice. The confrontation was over. The silence in the apartment was deafening. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Thomas Vance was front-page news. He was suspended. He was arrested. His life, his reputation, his family, all of it was incinerated in the firestorm I had started. Justice, brutal and swift, was served. My own end was quieter. The firm fired me. The bar began disbarment proceedings. The FBI questioned me, but they were more interested in how I got the data than why. I told them I received an anonymous tip. They didn't believe me, but the evidence against Vance was so overwhelming that my own illegal actions became a secondary concern. I was a pariah, the lawyer who went rogue. The day Vance was indicted, I sat in my empty office. I had sold my furniture to pay my legal bills. The shattered window was boarded up. The cold was gone. I looked at my desk. The Samsung phone was dark. I picked it up. It felt like just a piece of plastic and glass. The presence, the rage, the sorrow, it had all vanished. Daniel Anderl was at peace. I survived. But survival is not peace. You can't unsee what I've seen. You can't walk through the veil into that icy darkness and then pretend it doesn't exist. The world of logic and precedent is a child's blanket, a flimsy shield against the cold. I am a marked man, not by the law, but by the other side. I lost my career, my reputation, and my grasp on reality. That is the scar. I see shadows in every reflection. I hear whispers in every burst of static. I know that the dead do not rest when they are wronged. I know that justice is a hunger that can consume the living. I still have the phone. I don't know why. Sometimes, I charge it. I tell myself it's just a reminder. But last night, the screen flickered. A new text message appeared. The sender was unknown. It wasn't from Daniel. It was a different name, a different case I'd read about. A woman's name. The message was simple. I was next. He's still out there. Help me.